This is Groundeffected. My name is your dad, and welcome to Space Marine Lore by a Heretic. In this video, I 3D printed something that vaguely resembles a person called Guilliman. Now, of course, this is probably something a lot of Warhammer people will be very upset about, and I don't care. Also, it was very fun to paint, and I'm gonna show you how I painted that right meow. But before we get into that, let's just make sure you have clicked the like button, and if you haven't already, perhaps consider subscribing to the channel, because for every one more subscriber that I get, I will have one more new subscriber. Let's just get straight into the video. I recently released a video which outlined the technique that I had finally settled on for how I was going to paint my Space Marines, specifically my Ultramarines. The other night I was surfing on the internet and I saw somebody had mentioned this specific model. Now, I'm not going to leave a link for this model because I do not want it to be taken down. However, it is super easy to find using the same channels. Just look for the guy's name and you will find him. So to briefly go over how I painted this guy's armor, I started off with a black base coat. This is my primer layer and I use that as my base at the same time. I'm going to put white ink into my airbrush and I'm going to spray that in a volumetric highlight method. This is basically just showing off the volumes of the shapes on the model. A good trick for this perhaps might work for you, it worked for me very well, is to use alcohol to thin the inks rather than using water. I found that the alcohol thinned the ink and made it spray a little bit more smoothly with a couple less splatters like you usually get when you spray white ink. For this model, I just broke out my Tamiya panel liner and I smashed this into all the little gaps, every single little crevice that is on this model. This is going to create our depth. This will make those dark areas that are deep in the crevices even darker, and it's going to be so much better looking when we're done with this step. Once I've got this step done, I need it to dry, not fully dry. Don't leave this for 2 weeks before you do the next step. You have to do this step within at least an hour to 2 hours after letting it dry. And that step is to go back in with white spirits and a sponge or a cloth or your kid's t-shirt or cotton or whatever you have closest to you, and just wipe off some of the highest areas. What you're aiming for here is to bring back some of that white. You still want to keep that darkness in the recesses, but you want to make sure that the whites are whiter than you've ever seen in your life. Now, I especially don't know much about Ultramarines or Space Marines for that matter, and if you don't believe me, you can watch any of my previous videos that I've done about Warhammer. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I do know how to paint, and I really enjoy painting these guys. So if you like these guys and painting them, then perhaps you can follow my channel and look at the rest of the videos that I've made about painting these guys. For this dude, I'm going to use the same method as I'd said before, and I'm going to paint the Talisar contrast blue over the top of my Zenithal, essentially, that I had made. Once I've got a good solid blue, this is a step where you can kind of do a little bit less will give you a brighter blue and a little bit more will give you a darker blue, so you can kind of change the outcome at this level. I then use an ink, which in my case is Azul Blue from Vallejo, and I spray that into all the dark areas. This is going to create a much better looking transition between the dark areas and the light blue. Once all of that had dried, I went back in and I took black from Vallejo. It's a matte black. It works super well for doing what I'm doing. You water it down quite a lot and it kind of just fills in all the spaces and lays down super flat, which is amazing. And I paint every single thing that is not going to be blue armor with this black. This is just going to help me visualize things, as well as make it easier for me to paint over the top of that without interfering with the layers color that is going over the top. I painted my super secret recipe, which isn't very secret because realistically it's just Pro-Acryl Monument Hobbies friggin' bronze mixed with any kind of light gold that you can find to create a very good coverage paint. Most people who paint gold trimmings would know that gold does not go down in one paint coat. It takes a lot more than one paint coat to go down, and this is not fun. So if you use this specific method of using the bronze from Pro-Acryl and mix it with another color, there's something about that bronze that just makes it cover in one pass, and it is super great if you're doing anything that's gold. There is a couple of trims on him, specifically like his gun, and he's got obviously some kind of power arm. I think perhaps his hand is just a little bit weak, so they gave him a super special strong hand so that he doesn't have to be looked at badly by the other Space Marines, and this is going to make his ego feel so much more powerful. And speaking of powerful, you cannot have a powerful character in any kind of game if you don't have a massive cape on his back, because if you do not have some kind of incapacitating robe which can catch onto anything and trip you up or cover your face during a fight, then you clearly cannot be a leader. As we all know, all badasses have a cape. For the base, I'm going to use Martian Iron Crust, which is a technical paint. I've explained this before in a couple of videos. To be honest, it's actually starting to get a little bit repetitive at this point. However, I'm going to paint a lot more of these Space Marines, so please, if you do enjoy watching my videos, then stick around for these ones. I'm going to show you how I paint through each of my units. I'm not going to go through each individual character, but I'll probably go through each main character and perhaps each main unit, like some of the big vehicles and things like that. So if you're interested in seeing those, make sure to click the like button, click subscribe, and click on that notification bell so that you can be notified the next time I upload a Space Robot Marine Men video. Working on his face, I can't even tell you what I did. It was complicated. Painting faces at this size is ridiculous. You shouldn't even do it. I don't know why anyone does it. They should all just wear helmets, and this will make your life so much easier. There is a couple of wreaths around this guy. I'm not really sure why he has these. I feel like perhaps one of his cousins was a friend of Julius Caesar and he really liked the aesthetic, so he started to use wreaths in his costume, especially when he was doing his little masquerading on the battlefield. He felt like this made him appear more glamorous to his Space Marine friends. And so I painted those wreaths with green. I just used a black base coat, paint them back to black first, then paint green just only on the leaves. And it's pretty easy, just like that. And that is pretty much when I called this model done. Since I've already done this technique in previous videos, you probably didn't learn too much from this one. However, hopefully you enjoyed watching me paint Redbutt Guilliman for your own viewing pleasure. Now of course, you probably couldn't field this guy in a game, especially in any of the official organized matches, as they call these things. But if you wanted to paint something just a little bit different, and you're tired of the same poses and the same dudes that you can only get from the plastic crack mansion that is Games Workshop, then perhaps you want to consider using your 3D printer to make something a little bit different. Also, if you like painting large statues and you don't care much for miniatures, that's also not a problem. You can use a lot of the techniques I used in this video on your larger statues. In fact, I use them all the time. One of the best things that I find is to practice on smaller models. This is because it takes a whole lot less paint. It also means it takes a lot less time as well. So if you're wanting to practice certain techniques, the best thing you can do is print a couple of minis and paint them. This is one of the fastest ways for you to hone in on your skills and practice things like brush control, as well as work out certain color schemes and work on your color theory in general. Now, as we are at the end of the video, I would like to say a super special thank you to my Patreons for their support and their help in blinding my eyeballs with these lights. This week we got a couple new Patreons and I'd like to thank them right now. The Frayed Brush, Chris, Farvey, and Stubby Dragon. Thank you dude so much for helping blind my eyeballs with my lights. And as you know, once we get to the end of a video, there is only one thing I have left to say to you, and that is, if you did not like this video, then the best thing you can do for yourself is just click the dislike button and then kindly f*** off. Because I don't really care if you don't like miniatures, but if you like painting and printing, you'll probably like this channel anyway.